Everyone's going on a company outing this Saturday. Anyone who doesn't join will have their activity expenses deducted. As soon as the notice went out, the group chat fell silent at first, then suddenly started flooding with private messages. Some people wanted to bring their kids along, others needed to head back home to pick up medicine for their sick father, and still others just really wanted to spend the whole day lounging around in their rented apartments. But no one dared to say outright in the group chat, "I'm not coming." On Saturday, everyone braved the scorching sun, forced to play games like Eagle Catches Chickens and multiplayer coordination Big Feet on a suburban lawn. The boss stood nearby, smiling warmly. "This is all about team bonding, relax a bit, everyone." A week later, during a break in the tea room, the finance manager let slip, "The company that organized this outing is actually run by the boss's relative, he's made another tidy profit this time." The coworkers exchanged glances. Fine. I've seen an even more extreme version of this elsewhere. At another company, the team-building event was held at some high-end adventure camp, where the cost per activity was ridiculously high. Employees were forced to climb high walls, crawl through rope nets, and even do backbends to be caught, ending up covered in mud from head to toe. At the end, the boss raised his glass for a closing remark. "Every drop of sweat you've shed today is for a better version of yourselves tomorrow." Later, a colleague looked up the legal entity of the campsite, and it turned out that the surname of the owner was exactly the same as the boss's. Another perfect example of a closed-loop ecosystem. The company foots the bill, employees put in the effort, relatives reap the financial rewards, and it's all packaged up as team building and corporate culture. Classic. The very concept of mandatory team-building activities is already rather odd. If the goal really is to unite hearts, shouldn't it make people feel comfortable and respected, rather than relying on fines, attendance checks, or photo-based check-ins? When participation or non-participation seems like an employee's freedom but actually turns out to be a financial risk, such activities have already shifted from team building to de facto overtime plus benefit transfers. Even more intriguing is this question: why do the words "the boss's relative's company" keep popping up again and again in contexts like tenders, procurement, team-building events, and renovations? The reason isn't complicated. These expenditures aren't small in amount, yet they don't directly involve the end customer. Employees have no say in pricing and can only experience the results. Meanwhile, external oversight bodies rarely bother to scrutinize how a particular company goes about building team culture. As a result, the expenditure item that's easiest to go through the motions with naturally becomes a side fund for some individuals. And the team? It's merely used as a backdrop in this broker-like game, gathering together, lining up, chanting slogans, holding banners, snapping a harmonious photo, then uploading it to WeChat public accounts and recruitment websites for future use when hiring another batch of employees. What about the employees themselves? They're already exhausted, their pay has been docked, they've lost their weekends, and yet, deep down, they still don't feel any more connected to the company. So, whose hearts exactly is the boss talking about when he mentions uniting people's hearts? And now, let's get practical. When it comes to team-building activities like these, there's really only so much an individual can do. You've got a family to support and a job to keep. There's no way you can always take a firm stand against everything. I've seen some readers share several relatively mild strategies. Try to frame your objections in a more structured way. For instance, instead of simply saying, "I don't want to go," you could ask, "Is participation in this activity voluntary? Could we offer an option that allows employees to opt out without any financial deduction? Could we add more sessions specifically for family members?" By shifting the focus from "should I comply or not" to "is this system fair and reasonable?" At the very least, demand transparency. Some companies are even too afraid to disclose their budgets. You could totally bring up the issue at the staff meeting and ask, "What's the budget for this team-building event? Who's organizing it? Has the company compared prices with other providers?" It might not necessarily lead to actual change, but just by asking the question, you're already taking a step toward greater transparency. Take note of these details. They'll serve as a reference for whether to stay or go. How a company treats its employees' weekends, physical health, and emotional well-being. It all becomes clear after just one team building event. Friends, what's the most absurd team building experience you've ever had? And at what moment did you suddenly realize, oh, so it turns out we're just another line item on someone's ledger? Feel free to share your stories. Let's help future colleagues avoid at least one or two pitfalls. Alin is a sales rep at an international trade company, working primarily in the European and American markets. She usually lives paycheck to paycheck, working nonstop all year round. Once, to meet a big order deadline, the company asked the entire team to work around the clock, requiring everyone to do unpaid overtime for 3 consecutive weekends. In the group chat, the boss spoke with great conviction. Right now, our company is at a critical juncture. Everyone needs to keep the bigger picture in mind and not nitpick over overtime pay. Alin replied right there in the group chat, then may I ask, will there be any overtime pay? Or compensatory leave? The boss replied with just 2 words, no. Unable to hold back any longer, she confronted her boss right there in the office. According to accounts from bystanders, the exchange went roughly like this: Arlene, unpaid overtime is illegal, you're forcing everyone to risk their lives just to boost your profits. Boss, if you don't want to work, you can just quit. There's a whole bunch of people out there waiting to take your place. Arlene gave a cold laugh and said, fine. But before I leave, I'll make sure to tell our clients the truth. Then, she turned around, went back to her desk, and sent emails to several key overseas clients. The gist of her message was that, in order to meet delivery deadlines, the company had been asking employees to work unpaid overtime. There were serious risks in both production and quality control, and these issues could potentially affect delivery schedules and product quality. She urged the clients to proceed with caution. After reading the emails, several major clients immediately suspended their orders. The company's cash flow suddenly came under severe strain. The boss went completely berserk, calling her on her phone, sending WeChat messages, and leaving over 300 missed calls over the course of 2 full days and 3 nights. She didn't take a single call. When I first heard this story, my instinctive reaction was, wow, how nerve-wracking. I couldn't help but sweat for her. By the usual playbook, she'd likely have been accused of leaking trade secrets, harming the company's interests, or even blacklisted by the industry. But viewed from another angle, she really did something that many people have thought about, but never dared to actually do. She exposed the company's internal shortcomings to an external party with real influence and power. You could say she was impulsive, you could say she lacked professionalism, you could even say she wasn't smart enough. But it'd be hard to argue that she was entirely wrong. After all, she simply used the tiny bit of power she had in her hand to blow the whistle, in reverse. Since you're pressuring me with the company's interests, then I'll just tell the real stakeholders, the customers, about the true risks involved. From a structural perspective, this is an extreme case of reverse accountability. Someone was supposed to hold businesses accountable for illegal overtime work and excessive working hours, but in reality, oversight often falls short, unions remain silent, and it's incredibly difficult for employees to defend their rights. So, some people end up taking this step. It's a step that comes at a high price and isn't something we'd recommend as a general practice. Yet in itself, it serves as a resounding slap in the face of the notion that unpaid overtime is perfectly acceptable. What happened next? Of course, Alin was fired, and she also had her commission withheld for several months. But because the wording of her email at the time was remarkably restrained, simply stating the facts without exaggeration or spreading rumors, the company ultimately didn't pursue legal action. Instead, they only subtly dropped hints within the industry. She told me herself, I knew this would pretty much cut off my career path in this field, but in that moment, I really just didn't want to be a coward anymore. I can understand her feelings, yet I still reserve my own perspective. Not everyone should, or even can, reach such an extreme point. But in her own unique way, she reminded us of a crucial truth: when all conventional channels are blocked, people will inevitably turn to unconventional ones. What you might dismiss as a personal character issue is actually a systemic rot. So, what can we, the ordinary working folks, take away from her story, beyond just being left with goosebumps? Perhaps these 3 sobering takeaways. First, while you still need this job, don't rashly make a lose both jade and gemstone kind of choice. Venting feels good, but its consequences last far longer. Before your emotions erupt, exhaust every seemingly boring legitimate path first, reach out to HR, send emails, document evidence, and seek advice from labor arbitration authorities. And at all times, do your best to keep at least 1 or 2 transferable skills in reserve: foreign languages, specialized expertise, professional networks, even just a stable side hustle. You think it's cowardice, but actually you're saving your bargaining chips instead of throwing them all away in a moment of impulse.